White-collar crime has an unfortunate association with business in most developed countries. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 infamous CEOs who went to jail.
Stanford ran up the debt about 1 month before regulators shut down his financial empire.
Before we begin, we publish new videos every day, so be sure to subscribe for more great content. For this list, we'll be looking at high-level executives who were ultimately locked away for manipulative, corrupt, or otherwise illegal endeavors within their respective companies. Whether the punishment fits the crime or not is a discussion for another time, but actual hard jail time must have been served to qualify. Also, you don't need to be a company's chief executive officer to commit serious white-collar crime, so high-ranking executives have been considered as well. Number 10. Calisto Tanzi. In 2003, the Italian food and dairy corporation Parmalat filed for bankruptcy. With over $14 billion in debt, this step only made sense. But it soon emerged that sinister activities were taking place beneath the surface. Mr. Tanzi was a trusted founder of Parmalat, so trusted that no one suspected he'd embezzled over 800 million euros from the company. The businessman was sentenced to 10 years in prison in 2008. A series of appeals and additional sentences followed, which upped that time to about 17 years. To this day, the Parmalat scandal remains the largest bankruptcy in European history. Number 9. Sanjay Kumar. Kumar worked his way up the corporate ladder at Computer Associates International and eventually became CEO in 2000. His term in the prestigious position was short-lived, however. He was investigated for fraud 4 years later, and it was revealed that Sanjay had been cooking the books, leading to billions of dollars of discrepancy.
Who can you trust to do the forensic accounting?
One method he used in his accounting gymnastics earned the nickname the 35-day month. In 2006, the former CEO was finally convicted of obstruction of justice and securities fraud, calling his cover-up, quote, the most brazen and comprehensive in the modern era of corporate crime. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in prison. Oh, and he has to pay almost $800 million in restitution. Number 8. Richard M. Scrushy. Accounting fraud is hardly a sexy crime, and perhaps this is one reason why so much of it goes unnoticed. Scrushy founded a healthcare company in Alabama called Health South in 1984 and gained notoriety for illicit accounting practices in 2003.
You have 5 people that have made these claims out of 50,000 people.
Scrushy's first trial for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy ended in an acquittal in 2004. But a new federal trial in 2005 ended with convictions for bribery, fraud, and conspiracy. Scrushy was sentenced to 7 years in prison. He was later found guilty in a civil trial and ordered to pay $2.87 billion in damages. He was released in 2012 from federal prison and has actually been outspoken about the government's lackadaisical approach to white-collar crime nowadays.
I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not upset about that. I'm not drinking any poison.
Number 7. Martin Grass. When you think of Scranton, Pennsylvania, you may think of the cozy town with the lovable working-class employees as seen in The Office. But the story behind Scranton native drugstore chain Rite paints a different picture. From its humble beginnings in the 1960s, the business grew significantly over the next 3 decades. But it took a turn for the worse when its founder's son, Martin Grass, took over in 1995. Grass thought it would be wise to systematically overstate Rite-Aid's earnings in an effort to grow the company. This almost destroyed the drugstore chain. Grass was caught up in a $1.6 billion scandal and sentenced to 8 years in prison. Number 6. Walter Forbes. Cendant Corporation was formed from a merger of Hospitality Franchise Systems and CompuCard International, and might have gone on its merry way had they not allowed Walter Forbes to become CEO.
The name behind the names you trust.
Merging companies is a great way to create synergies that make a company altogether more efficient, in theory. Unfortunately, Cendant Corporation soon found that CompuCard's efficiencies had been, shall we say, overstated by its then CEO Forbes. He claimed to have unknowingly reported $500 million in imaginary earnings, but supposed ignorance is hardly bliss in this situation. Forbes was eventually sentenced to 12 years in prison and $3.28 billion in damages.
You're under arrest! You gotta be joking me.
Number 5. Dennis Kozlowski.
Everything I was doing for 27 years.
Tyco is an international business that focuses largely on security solutions and fire protection. Despite this, its internal security was clearly lacking in at least one instance. When images of the lavish Wall Street lifestyle of the 90s come to mind, know that Kozlowski was a poster boy for this image. Before indictment, he owned a $30 million New York City apartment complete with $6,000 shower curtains. Turns out that was in part thanks to a scheme that gave him over $80 million in unauthorized bonuses. Kozlowski was sentenced to a minimum of 8 years and 4 months in 2005.
And I think a juror sitting there just would have to say, all that money, he must have done something wrong.
Number 4. Jeffrey Skilling.
Welcome, everyone, to Enron Gas Services Solutions Day.
When phrases like white-collar crime are brought up, Enron is typically one of the first associations to be made. Skilling was one of the main perpetrators behind this catastrophe, and it started with a bookkeeping technique known as mark-to-market accounting, a technique that records assets based on expected values as opposed to actual values. The next step was creating an Enron subsidiary to sweep all debt under the rug when this proved to be inadequate.
I absolutely, unequivocally thought the company was in good shape.
Upon discovery, $405 million in losses were reflected overnight, and Skilling was slapped with 24 years in prison. Number 3. Bernard Ebbers. Ebbers helped create Long Distance Discount Services Incorporated, a telecommunications firm that eventually became WorldCom in the coming years.
WorldCom. Want confidence? You'll find the path very clearly marked.
His Greek tragedy began to unfold as Icarus flew too close to the sun in 1999, with an announcement that WorldCom intended to purchase Sprint. Antitrust laws resulted in the deal not going through, and subsequently in a massive drop in WorldCom stock. Instead of downsizing or waiting it out, Ebbers worked with a team to employ elaborate accounting gymnastics, which resulted in $11 billion overstated on the books.
We would never have integrated. Nobody has combined billing systems for that.
This did not bode well for the company, nor for the businessman himself, who is working on a 25-year sentence in Louisiana. Number 2. Alan Stanford.
My number one goal is to fight this thing for the investors.
Stanford actually made his first attempt at professional success with a bodybuilding gym in Texas. This eventually failed, and he moved into finance soon after, ultimately becoming chairman of the Stanford Financial Group. They began to catch the attention of the SEC and FBI due to consistently high returns compared to the market. When the Stanford financial offices were raided in 2009, the cover was blown off a massive Ponzi scheme.
Everything seemed reasonable.
Stanford still publicly states that the company never swindled anyone, but his unwillingness to acknowledge clear facts did not stop him from receiving a 110-year sentence. Well, at least he'll have plenty of time to pursue his bodybuilding dream. Before we unveil our number 1 pick, here are some honorable, or in this case, dishonorable mentions.
No, I'm a tough person from start. I've always been a tough person.
It wasn't something that happened really involving the company. And it is something that I wish had not happened.
Number 1, Bernie Madoff. He's behind the largest financial fraud in U.S. history. Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities LLC was highly respected on Wall Street, and everyone from individual investors to charities was more than happy to entrust him with their life savings. His returns were considerable, but every bit of this was fabricated, and Madoff was effectively taking money from investors' pockets.
You could potentially be in an investment that your advisor is making money off of losses on.
He was eventually sentenced to 150 years in federal prison, but irreparable damage had been done to countless victims in the process. Today, many think of him as an embodiment of corporate greed, Wall Street corruption, and capitalism run amok.
At one point, he said something strange to me. He said, every once in a while, I find myself smiling, and I'm horrified.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo and subscribe for new videos every day.